Hey everyone! Brace yourselves, because shocking new evidence just uncovered about Lynette Hooker and her husband Brian has taken this entire active investigation in a terrifying new direction. Look, we all remember the original story, told for months, that Lynette tragically fell off a dinghy into the pitch-black ocean during their dream vacation in the Bahamas. But whatever story Brian fed the police, and whatever you believed about this disappearance until now, this breaking update completely tears that narrative apart.
Investigators recently bypassed the main computers of the boat
and extracted files from a hidden high-tech infrared security camera on the yacht that captures movements even in complete darkness.
This digital footprint completely corners Brian
in a devastating lie, changing the entire case. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel right now, and let's go straight to the evidence. Don't skip a single second of this, because what comes next will absolutely shake you to your core. That hidden infrared camera was the first major blind spot in Brian's seemingly perfect alibi. For weeks, he gave investigators a tragic story about his wife being thrown from the dinghy by a sudden 20-knot gust of wind at sunset. He claimed he desperately tried paddling with a single oar for 7 grueling hours in pitch-black darkness before washing ashore on a nearby island to plead for help. But the yacht's onboard security system was quietly recording a very different story. When federal detectives from the Coast Guard Investigative Service seized their sailboat named Soulmate, they targeted the yacht's onboard electronics with surgical precision. Digital forensics experts bypassed the encrypted layers of the marine chart plotters and hidden cameras. What they found completely blew Brian's timeline apart. The digital footprint proved that during the exact hours Brian claimed to be drifting helplessly in a raging ocean storm, their luxury yacht was completely stationary. Even more disturbing, the GPS coordinates revealed the yacht had been sitting in a highly specific, remote sector of the Sea of Abaco. This precise coordinate history directly contradicted the search parameters Brian gave to Bahamian authorities on day 1. By feeding them false coordinates, Brian deliberately sent rescue divers and search planes miles away from the spot where the yacht actually sat. He created a calculated decoy zone, keeping the real site completely untouched for nearly 2 months. But why would a husband intentionally mislead a search team hunting for his missing wife? The dark answer lay buried deep within their family dynamic. A far cry from the glossy travel videos they shared on social media. While online followers saw a couple living a picture-perfect life on the water, Lynette's own daughter, Carly, knew a much darker truth about what went on when the cameras stopped rolling. She immediately came forward to the authorities with a chilling revelation about Brian's true nature. Carly told federal agents that the picture-perfect marriage showcased on TikTok was a total sham. Behind closed doors, the couple shared a deeply volatile relationship that quickly turned dangerous whenever alcohol was involved. She confessed to the Coast Guard that her mother lived in constant terror of Brian's temper. According to Carly, when Brian drank, his rage completely consumed him, and he would make terrifying threats. That left her mother feeling trapped and completely helpless on the isolated sailboat. But the danger went far beyond mere words. Then, Carly dropped a massive bombshell that completely shifted the course of this criminal investigation. She revealed that Brian had a specific, violent signature move whenever he lost control. He did not just strike his victims, he went straight for the throat. Carly told detectives and national media outlets that she had personally witnessed Brian choking his own daughter during a fit of blinding rage. Other close friends of Lynette quickly backed up this terrifying psychological profile. They had warned her that being alone out on the open water with him was incredibly dangerous. This dark domestic horror story made investigators realize that Lynette's sudden disappearance was likely not some freak maritime accident, The timeline of events began pointing toward a cold, calculated execution rather than a tragedy caused by rough ocean currents. Homicide detectives began to suspect that Brian had finally let his explosive temper take over.
During that quiet April night out in the Bahamas,
Driving him to do something so horrific he could never take it back. Suspicion grew even heavier when on-scene news reporters in the Bahamas began interviewing locals who had assisted Brian during those first critical hours of the search. These key witnesses noticed a chilling, absolute lack of urgency in the husband's behavior. He showed absolutely zero panic, no desperation, and absolutely no emotion while his wife was supposedly drowning in the pitch-black ocean. Then, just as the Coast Guard began poking holes in his story, Brian did the one thing guilty suspects do when pressure becomes too intense. He suddenly packed his bags and fled the Bahamas, heading straight back to his hometown in Michigan. He abandoned the active search area right after promising the media cameras that he would remain on the islands forever, until he found his missing wife. He claimed he had to leave because his mother had suddenly fallen ill. But federal agents knew the timing was just too convenient. The pressure was mounting, and the trap was finally about to snap shut. With Brian hiding out in Michigan, the Coast Guard launched a high-stakes maritime interdiction. They tracked the yacht, Soulmate, 40 nautical miles off the coast of Melbourne, Florida. Armed federal agents intercepted the vessel out in open water and seized it under a criminal warrant. The vessel was immediately sealed off as an active crime scene, and its onboard electronics were rushed straight to the elite FBI forensic lab in Quantico. Newly recovered GPS coordinates gave forensic dive teams a highly specific search grid in the Sea of Abaco. The Bahamian government granted emergency clearance for American dive teams to return straight to those tropical waters. This time, they were not guessing. They locked onto an undisturbed sector exactly 25 feet deep. But combing a dark underwater graveyard 2 months after her disappearance is a haunting race against time for even the most elite recovery teams. Forensic experts know that when a victim drowns, a process known as body refloat typically occurs within a few warm days. Microbial gases expand inside the remains, making them buoyant until they finally surface. But in the warm tropical currents of the Bahamas, if a body still hasn't surfaced after 8 long weeks, it suggests nature was interfered with. It means the victim was either heavily weighed down to counteract buoyancy, or she was never in the water at all. Now, divers had to brace themselves for whatever was waiting on the ocean floor. The elite dive team prepped underwater propulsion vehicles ready to sweep the seabed in tight, systematic grids. Finding any human remains in these warm tropical currents after 60 days is a gruesome task. Forensics experts admit that any soft tissue would be completely gone by now, stripped by marine scavengers and rapid underwater decay. The divers knew they were not looking for a recognizable person anymore. They were scanning the white sand strictly for skeletal remains. But as the underwater search deepened, a chilling new theory emerged from the forensic timeline. Detectives realized there was a massive, unexplained 9-hour gap between the moment Lynette supposedly fell from the dinghy and when Brian finally reported her missing to the police, even with a slow boat crawling at minimal speed. That 9-hour window gives a suspect plenty of time to cover vast distances across the open ocean. This massive delay means Brian could have slipped far outside the active search grids. He had plenty of time to weigh the body down in the deep, crushing pressure zones of the Gulf Stream where it would never resurface. Or even worse, it means Lynette was murdered somewhere on dry land. And this whole boating accident was just a calculated decoy. Now, the digital net is tightening around Brian in Michigan, and hidden infrared camera files might hold the final answers.